I'm back with some more weird short stories. There is potential for eating. Today I bought a giant ube ensamada. It was really big, and it's like $4.50. It's like the size of a small pizza. So like I'm open to eating that, but I'm like not hungry. So I'm kind of down to just read short stories. I don't know. I guess we'll see how many people join. What have we got? Ooh, there's a story called Visions. Oh, the section of the book is called Visions of Terror and Paradise. And there's a story called Cast from the Garden. Sounds intriguing. Cast from the Garden, Thoughts from Behind a Rock. Let's see. I haven't read this book since I was like 16, so I can't remember what this short story is about, but let's see. Thoughts from Behind a Rock. In William Boyd's bright novel of exquisite embarrassment, A Good Man in Africa, the protagonist, a British Foreign Service official, finds himself, for a series of convoluted reasons, naked in the jungle, voiding his bladder on a column of ants, and listening to the moronic, unvaried chirrup of crickets. We're off to a good start, aren't we? One man against nature, he said to himself in a deep American accent. Nude in the African forest, for a second or two he tried to imagine himself thus exposed, a creature of pure instinct. The setting was right. Dusk, heat, foliage, animal noise, mysterious crepitations in the undergrowth. But he was wrong. What would anyone think if they saw him, a naked, overweight, freckled white man, ludicrously nude and barely human? So it is with nudity in the forest. The fragile illusion of omnipotence and grace collapsing in the presence of a single witness, even the mere thought of one. I know this for a fact. One summer day in Innsbruck, Austria, I was the only passenger on the chairlift to the top of the mountain. From the top of the lift, I hiked for several hours, walking alone above the tree line until I found a sunny spot for lunch. There was no one about. And I stripped off my clothes and sprawled on the hot rocks, soaking up the sun. Some time after eating, I remember standing on a boulder, looking down on small spots of color that were the houses of Innsbruck far below. How significant were civilization and its discontents, and I was a giant of a man, towering above all that was petty and small, a man naked and unashamed, a man in tune with the power of nature, in tune with Falderay! The voices were high and pure and sweet, children's voices. The singing was coming from some sort of distance below. Faldera! I had thought I was alone, but had not counted on the Austrian's love of hiking. Falderay! The song was louder now, and the children were very close. The trail passed directly under the rock where I stood, and my clothes were 20 yards away, somewhere on the other side of the rocky path. I considered a frantic dash, then discarded the idea, certain that my body, such as it is, was not one of the wonders of nature these children had climbed on a mountain to see. Soon they would be topping the ridge and coming around the bend. Miserably naked, I crouched behind a rock, holding my breath. And here they came, a kind of scout troop, 12-year-old boys and girls together, led by a stout, muscular man in lederhosen and knee socks. Faldera, ha 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 ha. An entirely naked man, crouched in shame and fear behind a rock, is obliged to consider the symbology of Genesis. In the second chapter of the good book, before their expulsion from the garden, Adam and Eve were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. Good for them. But soon they began humanity on its passage from a state of innocence and bliss into the knowledge of evil, misery, fast food, and North Dakota. Driven from the garden and possessed of guilty knowledge, Adam and Eve gathered up fig leaves and made themselves aprons. Try that on a talus slope a few thousand feet above Innsbruck. When God called them, they hid, because as Adam later explained, I was afraid, because I was naked. All of us, religious or not, seem to have some dim vision of the garden, an archetype that lives in the racial memory as surely as the fear of falling or the hatred of lawyers. Nearly 5,000 years ago, in what is now southern Iraq, the people of the land of Sumer developed the world's first written language. One of the grand Sumerian epics concerned an earthly paradise, probably located in southwest Persia, where the first man and woman went proudly naked. According to cuneiform script, scratched in rock 5 millennia ago, the first couple was persuaded by a fox to eat one of 8 fruits that had been specifically forbidden to them. Big mistake. The landlord evicted the couple, and their descendants were forced to wear message t-shirts and designer jeans. Ever since, cultured individuals have equated clothing with civilization. Once in Africa, I talked to a colleague who had applied to visit the pygmies of the Ituri forest. The bureaucrat who denied the application, my friend discovered later, routinely forbade journalists to visit the Ituri. He believed that depictions of the pygmies' lives would be detrimental to the image of Zaire and make it appear less than completely civilized to the rest of the world. They wear few clothes, and you will surely be offended. N'est-ce pas? The bureaucrat had said, frowning intently. The bureaucrat, my friend told me, wore a double-knit leisure suit. When supposedly civilized individuals are discovered nude in the forest, charitable people simply assume they are insane. Something like this happened to the writer Farley Mowat when he traveled up above the Arctic Circle to study wolves several decades ago. In his memoir of a season with the wolves, Never Cry Wolf, Mowat writes about a warm August day on the tundra. I decided to take advantage of the weather and have a swim and get some sun on my pallid skin, so I went off a few hundred yards from the Eskimo camp. Modesty is the last of the civilized vices which a man sheds in the wilds. Stripped, swam, and then climbed a nearby ridge and lay down to sunbathe. In Carol Ballard's brilliant cinematic version of Never Cry Wolf, Charles Martin Smith, the actor playing Mowat, dozes, then wakes to find himself in the middle of a huge migrating caribou herd. Rather than lose the opportunity to study the interaction of wolf and caribou firsthand, Smith, entirely naked but for his boots, runs with predator and prey, a scene of beauty and splendid savagery. What Ballard chose not to film was the aftermath of the chase. I gave it up then, Mowat wrote, and turned for home. I saw several figures running towards me, and I recognized them as the Eskimo camp woman and her 3 youngsters. They seemed to be fearfully distraught about something. They were all screaming, and the woman was waving a 2-foot-long snow knife, while her 3 offspring were brandishing deer spears and skinning knives. Mowat sprinted back to his camp, pulled on his pants, and picked up his rifle. Later, when things had quieted down, he learned that the woman had heard from one of her sons that the wolf man had gone galloping out over the hills, quite naked. She, brave soul, assumed that I had gone out of my mind. Eskimos believe that no white man has very far to go in that direction, and was attempting to assault a pack of wolves barehanded and bare everything else. Calling up the rest of her brood and snatching up what weapons were at hand, she set out to rescue me. I was thinking about this story, about the garden, about the conditions inside Austrian jails, as the parade of revoltingly cheerful children marched by my rock, singing like little banshees. It took them weeks to pass. I yearned for dwarfdom and wished the children of Austria mortification and porridge for dinner. Falderay! When the little cretins were finally gone, and I could hear them only faintly, I found my clothes and started trudging mournfully down the mountain, thinking uncharitable thoughts. The garden is a secret spot, and one not gladly shared. It took me 15 full minutes in a pair of pants before the situation began to seem even vaguely amusing. Read smut, please. I don't have any smut to read. I don't have those books. I don't have smut books. They don't really do it for me. I only have weird stories about strange people doing strange things. What's going on, guys? I'll probably do another one because that one was short, but I wanted to check in. You've missed me. How sweet. I'm gonna puke. What was that you were reading? I was reading a short story. Technically, I shouldn't even be reading this because it's not, it's copyrighted because the author is still alive. But this is a story by Tim Cahill called A Wolverine. The book is called A Wolverine is Eating My Leg. The story was Cast from the Garden, Thoughts from Behind a Rock. So a guy was out on a hike, naked in the forest, when a bunch of children ran by, so he had to hide behind a rock, and so those were the thoughts crossing his mind regarding the ridiculousness of his situation and the embarrassment of being naked. There's also, let's see, the next one is called The Shadow of the Moon, and tonight is like the blue full supermoon. Maybe I should read this one. Let's see how long it is. When the next Diddy party? Do you mean when's the next time I'm tapping? I could tap a few things in between the next story. Okay, the next story isn't very long. It's only about like 15 pages. Searching for Grand Terror in Big Sky Country. Let me mingle, I can tap. What do you think, guys? First, I'm gonna have some water. What happened? How was everyone's day today? Tap that water. I'm very thirsty. You guys ask such inappropriate questions sometimes. Okay. The next story is called In the Shadow of the Moon, Searching for Grand Terror in Big Sky Country. And tonight is the blue full supermoon. Okay. Seattle in the sun is splendid, but Interstate 5 this day was slick, and the rain fell like a fine mist. To say it was raining in Seattle is like pointing out that bears tended to relieve themselves in remote wooded areas. People who live in Seattle have a puddle on the back stoop 365 days a year, and some experts attribute a significant portion of the city's suicides to its damp and pearly, sunless skies. I have always imagined that Venus, under its cloud cover, would look like an infrared Seattle. Grappling with these morbid and otherworldly thoughts, I turned east, where the weather got worse. Snoqualmie Pass was closed for an hour because of an avalanche, and the sun's light was a dead gray glow that barely filtered through the falling snow. I-90 eastbound out of Spokane was a trucker's nightmare. Big rigs were either jackknifed in the ditches or sitting safely on the side, defeated by some snow-packed pass. In Idaho at 3 a.m., the sky simply collapsed, and wind-driven drifts spread across the icy pavement. Dawn in Missoula, Montana consisted of a certain hazy brightness under glacial skies. The last total eclipse of the sun in the continental United States in this century was due in 3 days, and meteorologists working on special forecasts set the chances of heavy cloud cover at about 90%. The odds for actually seeing the phenomenon were dismal. Locals took that news much better than those of us who had spent considerable time and money to be in Montana in the dead of winter. I was sitting in a bar, all festooned with lumberjack paraphernalia, bitching over a beer, when a 300-pound log peeler suggested that I could go through the door marked "Gentlemen," turn off the light for several minutes, and get the same effect. Not exactly true, I thought. There just isn't all that much in the way of grand terror in the men's room. Eclipses ought to be awesome, as they were for our distant ancestors. When the lights went out at noon, those folks surely figured it was a message from Mr. Big that he wasn't entirely happy with the way things were going. The sun-worshipping Aztecs liked to sacrifice hunchbacks and dwarfs during an eclipse, which was apparently their way of saying, "We're sorry." In 840 AD, when the moon got between the earth and sun and its shadow fell on Louis of Bavaria, son of Emperor Charlemagne, his heart clogged up with a greasy sort of fear, and he fell to the ground lifeless as a rock. Louis of Bavaria, like a lot of big-time kings of the day, interpreted everything personally. The ancient Chinese were able to predict eclipses, but they preferred not to take any chances. Moon shadow or no, the appropriately forewarned populace hammered away on drums and fired arrows at the sun to frighten a celestial dragon, bent on dealing with the sun as if it were a macaroon. Legend has it that in 2134 BC, two astronomers, Shi and Ho, sampled local wines to excess and failed to predict an eclipse. They were subsequently beheaded for incompetence. These days, incompetents are seldom decapitated, and there are a growing number of people who go out of their way to be in the shadow of the moon as it sweeps across the earth somewhere on the average of once a year. I know 3 of these self-proclaimed eclipse addicts personally. One, an award-winning science writer, traveled to Africa, to Mauritania, to witness a total eclipse visible there in 1973. Now, Mauritania is one of the most God-forsaken places on earth. A scorching, poverty-stricken, sandstorm-racked desert hellhole, where his lips cracked and his brain boiled, and where he lost 20 pounds after getting amoebic dysentery. He returned to the States a shriveled, wind-burnt hulk who babbled, not entirely coherently, about the transcendental experience of totality. The other 2 eclipse addicts I know have no special interest in astronomy. One is a lawyer, the other a Sierra-backed country guide. None of these 3 has ever been able to explain to me just what it is they find so fascinating about an eclipse, or why they are so willing to spend hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars for a few minutes' thrill. All agree only that a total eclipse is worth the effort. Beyond that, they say, it's a situation in which you had to be there. This time, I had arranged to be there, viewing it all through a glass darkly. After the dragon ate the sun and spit it out, I figured I'd know if there was anything to this eclipse addict business. The trouble was, the weather didn't seem to want to operate. My science writer friend and I had conferred on this point. He had been collecting a lot of material from people who spend a lifetime studying something called eclipse meteorology, and had decided to go to a little town in the rain shadow of the Cascades. The path of totality was a band of darkness about 170 miles wide. North to south, it would sweep in out of the west, hitting Portland, Oregon, then curve gradually north through Walla Walla, Washington, and up to Missoula, Helena, Lewistown, Montana. Montana looked best to me. Mobility would be the key. If short-range forecasts showed clouds west of the Continental Divide, I'd run for the east. If there were clouds there, I'd head up to the high plains of north central Montana. I suggested to my friend that if the Cascades were socked in, he'd have no alternative viewing site. He smiled. He smiled smugly and waved his sheaf of eclipse forecasts. As it turned out, forecasts 3 days before the event indicated that a big Pacific storm was riding on in the jet stream, and that both of us were shit out of luck. The Eastgate Liquor Store and Lounge in Missoula is a good place to have a drink and complain about the prevailing cloud cover, but the bar chatter there wasn't about the weather. It was about some poor guy from Seeley Lake who had died an awful death the day before. He had been plowing the lake in preparation for a snowmobile race, and his 13-ton Alice Chalmers road grader had cracked through the ice like a bowling ball through the top of a glass coffee table. It was, everyone agreed, the kind of thing you have nightmares about. Imagine coming up under the ice, searching for the hole, feeling the burning in your chest, trying to control the overwhelming desire to gulp that frigid water into your lungs. The ice is no more penetrable than a layer of solid steel, but you hammer against it weakly, knowing then, with horrifying certainty, that you are dead. The peculiar thing about the entire tragedy, they said at Eastgate, was that the driver, Edward V, Mike Kelly, didn't have to go out on the ice. Everyone in town had told him not to go. A much lighter bulldozer had gone down only 2 weeks earlier, and the operator had been lucky to escape with his life. I wonder why someone would take a chance like that. Money? Machismo? Job pressure? What? Grand terror was what I had come to Montana to experience. And since it appeared that the weather was going to get between me and my attempt to unravel the mystery of eclipse addiction, I decided to make a quick 40-mile run to Seeley Lake. Darkness under the ice was going to have to substitute for darkness under the big sky, and one man's terror would have to do for every man's. The road runs by the lake, which is long and narrow and deep. Mountains rise on either side. The winter community at Seeley Lake is quite small, and if you sat long enough in Barney's bar and cafe, you'd likely meet everyone in town. The first person I ran into there was Roy Brown, a husky, slow-talking man who had been on the grader with Kelly when it went down. Yeah, Brown said. I went out with him because I didn't want him to go. Everyone told him not to do it. But he was determined, and I decided to go along and keep an eye on the ice. As soon as we hit the lake, there were all these popping noises from the ice contracting. We began working the snowmobile course, but on the first turn, we started to go through. The wheels dropped through the first layer of ice. The Montana winter had been especially severe, but there had been a few thaws. By late February, the ice was honeycombed with air pockets and was perilously thin. There were 2 major layers separated by air and slushy snow. The back wheels of the grader dropped through the first layer, but the second layer held. Brown and Kelly decided to get off the ice, fast. Kelly brought the plow blade up and rammed the accelerator down, but before they reached shore, the grader broke through the ice again. This time, it didn't stop at the second layer. Both doors of the cab were open, Brown said, and I was standing on a little 4-inch ledge outside. I shouted that they were busting through and yelled to Mike to jump. I jumped off, and the last thing I saw was Mike, still sitting at the wheel, being thrown backward. When I landed, the front wheels of the grader were just going under. The thing went down like a concrete block dropped in a bathtub. There were bubbles coming up, and a sort of whirlpool, sucking down big chunks of ice. I thought about going in after him. But I thought I'd be pulled down by the suction of the sinking grader. It was pulling all sorts of stuff down with it, like the draft behind a big truck on the highway. Brown lay out over the solid ice and cleared slush and float ice out of the hole so Kelly could get back up. He began pounding big chunks of ice around the hole to direct Kelly to the surface. Because sound underwater seems to come from everywhere, this was not an effective strategy. I started clearing away snow from around the hole to see if he had come up under the ice, Brown said, but it was a cloudy day, and you couldn't see through the ice at all. So I waited by the hole, hoping to pull him out when he came up, but Kelly never surfaced. And when the bubbles stopped, Brown ran for help. Over coffee at Barney's, I asked Bruce Copenhaver, a reserve deputy, a member of the search and rescue team, and a snowmobile racer, why it was necessary to have anyone clear snow off a race course. On a straightaway, he explained, hopped up snowmobiles can do 120 miles per hour, and loose snow on the track can be extremely dangerous. Powder thrown into the air by the drive belts can cut visibility substantially. A clear ice track makes for faster, safer race. That's why Copenhaver had been out on the ice with a bulldozer several days before the Kelly tragedy. Unlike Kelly, Copenhaver had been out on the ice with a bulldozer several days before the Kelly tragedy. Unlike Kelly, Copenhaver is an accomplished scuba diver with experience in the arcane art of ice diving. When his cat crashed through the ice, Copenhaver took a long, deep breath, but the cat sank so fast he found himself pressed tightly to the canopy over the driver's compartment, unable to free himself. The bulldozer settled in the silt at a depth of about 45 feet. In the sudden stillness, Copenhaver struggled free of the canopy. He was in big trouble. The sudden shock of the cold water had upset the delicate membranes of his inner ear, and he experienced a sudden burst of vertigo from the rapid pressure change. His ears ached, and the cold water sapped his will like juice being sucked from a section of orange. There was no visibility at the bottom of the lake. It was as dark as Dracula's crypt down there. In the icy blackness, Copenhaver thought of the lesson instructors drum into every new diver. Panic kills. There is always time to think. Luckily, Copenhaver told me, I found I was positively buoyant. He had been wearing thermal underwear, jeans, and snowmobile pants. Air was trapped between the layers. Ordinarily, the pressure at that depth should have compressed his clothes and forced the air out of them. But he had gone down too quickly for that to happen. Still, he knew he had to ascend in a hurry, before that pressure turned his clothes into a dozen or more pounds of dead weight. Assuming that the cat had dropped straight, and a perfectly vertical line could be drawn from the machine to the hole, Copenhaver began kicking, moving as well as darkness and vertigo would allow along that imaginary line. There was a thick layer of snow on the ice, and the sunlight did not penetrate it. At 30 feet, Copenhaver saw the hole. Sunlight on the water made it look dimly fluorescent. It was like being in a huge, windowless, unlighted warehouse, with one small skylight just at dusk. A shaft of dying light penetrated the water. Copenhaver was on a slight angle to the light and kicked rapidly toward it. His confidence grew. He even exhaled a little air and saw with satisfaction that he was ascending faster than the bubbles. Every scuba diver knows that smaller bubbles rise about 60 feet per minute. Making a quick, almost unconscious calculation, he knew he'd be on the surface in 15 seconds. He knew he could do it. It wasn't quite that easy. Copenhaver came up under a huge chunk of floating ice. He sank back down, tried another section of the hole, and once again hit ice. He was as close to panic as he had ever been when he burst through the water on his third attempt. He pulled himself to an ice ledge and gulped great draughts of frigid air. Lying there with his wet clothes freezing on his body, Copenhaver couldn't stop coughing and spitting up a bloody pink froth. The pressure of the water at 45 feet had ruptured some blood vessels in the back of his sinuses, but the injury wasn't serious. Mike Kelly had been an older man and one untrained in the art of ice diving. I'm just gonna take a breath there. Copenhagen and others on the search and rescue team had made several dives looking for their friend's body. They wore wetsuits and boots and hoods worn in cold water ocean diving, and they coated the exposed areas on their faces with lanolin. The dives were meticulously planned. They went down in teams following a descending line, each team of two connected by a close quarters buddy line. One member of each team was tied to a line held by a tender on the surface. Fanning out for the search, they tied a pivot line to the descending line. And when they worked their way around an obstacle, one team held the point. 3 sharp tugs at any time, and the diver was pulled rapidly to the surface. They found the grater at 60 feet, sunk into a soft layer of silt. Even with high-powered diving lights, visibility was a mere 36 inches. A thick cloud of mud and silt hung over the bottom to a height of about 10 feet. One diver worked his way into the cab of the grater. Kelly's body wasn't there. A former Navy diver who had seen too many bodies and who no longer worked with the search and rescue team devised an ingenious method of dragging the area where the grater had gone down. They hooked the body on the third pass. It was some 50 feet from the grater. Another team dived to the grater and attached a cable. 500 yards away on the shore was a huge heel boom crane anchored to other heavy machinery and trees. The cable was dragged over the ice and fixed to the crane, which strained against the weight of the 26,000-pound grater. The cable sawed a line through the ice, and when the grater was close enough to the shore, volunteer labor from the community cut huge blocks of ice and pulled them up with tongs. When the hole was large enough, they pulled the grater out of the lake. It came up front end first, then twisted ponderously on its back wheels. Blue-black lake mud dripped from it like some monstrous and alien thing. The owner of the grater, Fred Drew, of D&D Logging, stepped into Barney's and sat down with Copenhagen and me. He was a short, compact, tired-looking man. A few days ago, an anonymous caller had asked him why he had ordered Kelly out onto the ice. Drew wasn't angry, just saddened, and it showed clearly in his eyes. "I didn't order Mike to do anything," Drew said. "He was in charge of the heavy machinery. He told me he was going to take the grater out, and I told him to use his own discretion." Drew turned to Copenhagen. "That was my cat you went down in. Do you think I wanted another one down?" The proprietor, Barney Bowles, a longtime friend of Kelly's, sat down with us. "Was Mike being paid to plow the ice?" I said. Barney laughed, and Drew quietly said, "No, of course not." "What then? Was he a snowmobile enthusiast?" "He didn't own one," Drew said. Barney added, "He was a community enthusiast." Barney explained it like this. In the winter, the population of Seeley Lake runs around 1,000. In the summer, vacationers swell that number to as much as 10,000. People like Barney and many others in Seeley Lake make most of their money from tourists and local recreation seekers. The winter had been especially severe, and weather had reduced the number of cross-country skiers who normally visited the area. The community had felt the pinch. But the fine warm weather of late February had coincided with the Montana State Snowmobile Championship races, which would have attracted more than 125 racers from 7 western states and Canada. At least 1,000 people were expected to crowd into Seeley Lake for the 2-day event. Economically, it was the most important 2 days in the winter season. The racers needed clear ice. Drew donated the use of his equipment, and Kelly donated the labor. When people warned Mike to stay off the ice, he realized that they were asking him to take food off their table in exchange for his safety. He took the grater out on the lake for everyone in the community. For Mike Kelly, taking that chance was a sort of sacred duty. The championship races were canceled after the tragedy. Barney Bowles would help organize a benefit for Kelly's wife. It was volunteer labor that got Drew's machines out of the lake, and volunteer labor that would help build a new landlocked snowmobile course to be named after Mike. There would be no more snowmobile races on Seeley Lake. I knew Mike since he was 11 years old, Fred Drew said. He was my brother-in-law. I think about this all the time. I'll have to live with it for the rest of my life. We all will, Fred, Barney Bowles said softly. Things began looking up the day before the eclipse. A slight northerly shift in the jet stream, and the storm riding on it doubled the chances of clear weather in Missoula from 10 to 20%. East of the Continental Divide, along a line roughly from Great Falls to Livingston, meteorologists expected a Chinook, a warm, dry wind that could rip big holes in the cloud cover. The chances of clear skies in that area were 40%. In Livingston, at 3:30 a.m., the day of the eclipse, I could see stars shining through the cloud cover off to the north. Up that way, over some pretty substantial hills, was an area of high plains. I ran for it. The sun rose off to the right, coloring a sky a pale and pink-orange pastel over the snowy fields. There were high cirrus clouds. Wispy and insubstantial, the mountains dropped away, and the roads rolled out over the prairie, straight and dry, only now and again dipping into shallow river bottoms. Once, at 80 miles per hour, I hit a 200-yard patch of black ice and had rocketed over it before I realized how nearly fatal that little ride had been. I had a strong urge to pull over for a minute and let my hands stop shaking, but there was no time. I shot along the black ribbon of highway, thinking about Mike Kelly and machines on ice and how death and destiny make no allowance for good intentions. Diarrhea doesn't either, for that matter. I was clutching an open economy-sized bottle of Pepto-Bismol between my thighs. It served as a blunt reminder of a solemn oath I had taken the night before. I will, forevermore, avoid restaurants advertising Mexican cuisine when they are situated near the Canadian border. Just before that oath, I had consumed, to my almost immediate dismay, what the special menu described as an eclipse enchilada and a totality taco. At present, they lay in the bottom of my stomach like a pair of Poison Army socks. Towns, restaurants, and motels along the track of totality were cashing in on the eclipse the way Seeley Lake prepared for the snowmobile races, and for all the same reasons. In Manitoba, for instance, locals had built an ersatz igloo village to draw more eclipse addicts. In Winnipeg, the colonel was selling eclipse viewing goggles along with fried chicken. And at the Big Sky Resort near the entrance to Yellowstone Park, 550 people had paid $385 apiece to stay for the weekend and make a run for clear skies in a caravan of buses. At Harlowton, where US 191 crosses US 12, I passed 7 or 8 of those same charter buses, parked on the side of the road. They were obviously trying to decide whether to run north toward Lewistown or east to Roundup. There were several CB-equipped cars and trucks parked along with the convoy. I tried them on the road channel. Of course, I hadn't paid a cent for the services of the convoy's eclipse meteorologist, and the answering silence let me know that quite clearly. Switching to AM radio, I caught a forecast that confirmed what I could see with my own eyes. The weather was looking good around Lewiston. DJs on the Lewiston station proclaimed their city the eclipse capital of America. Local stores, they said, would be closed for 2 hours and would reopen when the lights came back on. There would be incredible savings. At one store, I was intrigued to hear bras and panties would be half off. I took 191 north. There were folks in the fields now, and you could see them tinkering with telescopes and cameras mounted on sturdy tripods. Just outside Lewistown, I pulled over and walked out onto a flat, snowy field where I met half a dozen students from Arizona. They had driven up to Montana stuffed into a wheezing 1964 Chevy Impala. Other small groups dotted the field. In one there was a short, dark-haired woman with wandering eyes, who called herself Meadowlark, and who had seen a total eclipse in the Caribbean. It was really, really amazing, she said. She had dragged several scruffy-looking and less enthusiastic friends with her. They were all from Boulder, Colorado, and except for Meadowlark, they sat around smoking hash in a bored and desultory manner. At 8:30 a.m., the moon took the first nip out of the sun. The students had set up a 4-inch reflecting telescope and were projecting the eclipse on a large, sturdy sheet of white cardboard. They spoke of sunspots and shadow bands and coronal prominences in an entirely giddy manner. On the cardboard, the dark ball worked its way over the shining ball with all the inevitability of a Greek tragedy. Meadowlark's friends became interested, and they drifted over to ask a few questions of the students. It was getting undeniably strange out, and now they wanted to savor the weirdness. It was about 20 degrees with high cirrus clouds, sketched across the sky like strands of angel hair. A fuzzy, indistinct red-orange rainbow formed around the sun, covering a fifth of the sky. In that field outside Lewiston, you could feel the tension all around. It was like a wire being drawn taut, a wire that was near the breaking point. When the moon had covered 90% of the sun's disk, the lights began to die. At 95%, it was much darker and colder. At 99%, the band of totality, that 170-mile wall of darkness, erupted out of the west. From all over the field, you could hear a low moaning sound, the kind of sound people in a roller coaster make at the top of the first high dip. There was a range of mountains far to the west, and I could see the sun setting on those craggy peaks. Then the mountains were gone, lost in the darkness. The band of totality came roaring over the snow-covered plain. There was nothing you could make out as distinct as the line of darkness, the more like a huge rippling wall of strange purple black. The deeper you looked into it, the darker it was. As the eclipse reached totality, the wall of darkness, moving at about 2,000 miles an hour, loomed up over all of us like a great, silent, inky tidal wave. In the sky, the dark disk of the moon completely covered the sun, except for a single spot on the high rim where bright golden sunlight poured through a deep crater on the moon. Surrounding the blackness of the moon's disk was the sun's corona, yellow with tingles of pink. The circular corona and that one bright crater full of sun created what is called the diamond ring effect. Then it was gone. At Goldendale, Washington, in the rain shadow of the Cascades, it got especially dark because the skies were shrouded in clouds. My science writing eclipse addict friend muttered curses amid the howls of the assembled meteorologists and astrophysicists. Near Roundup, folks from the eclipse convoy got their money's worth. The moon, like an inky thumb, blotted the sun out of a nearly cloudless sky. In Missoula, novelist James Crumley stepped into the parking lot of a bar called the Elbow Room, and the clouds parted briefly, giving him a perfect view of the totality. In Bozeman, 2,000 people gathered at the Museum of the Rockies, and as Wooden Legs chanted in a prayer of his native Cheyenne, the clouds parted. "You're the creator of us all," Wooden Legs said in English. "Bless all the people here." In Livingston, out by the Raw Deal Ranch, the chickens stopped scratching and went into the henhouse to roost. Confused dogs howled, and the horses got skittish in their stalls. The darkness itself was like nothing I ever seen. It was not quite black, but rather an iridescent indigo, a glowing science fiction sort of color. All over the field, people were shouting and cheering. Meadowlark hugged everyone, and her friends rolled in the snow like puppies. Totality lasted almost 2.5 minutes, and though the darkness was not the bitter, impenetrable sort one finds at the bottom of Seeley Lake, I thought of Mike Kelly, fighting the blackness and cold in the most brutally hostile environment imaginable. It occurred to me, in the inky iridescence of that field, that eclipse addiction has much to do with mortality. It is a shared premonition of death, enacted on a vast scale. The first sensible monotheistic religions worshipped the sun as the giver of life, the creator of us all. As John Woodenlegs would have it, there is truth there so deep and obvious we seldom acknowledge it. But it helps explain the suicides in Seattle's sunless seasons and why an eclipse has the power to stop the heart of a king. What we know intellectually, that totality is a transitory phenomenon, is not something we share with our emotions. The eclipse is a sudden, sharp view of the apocalypse. The moon swung slowly through the sky, and a salmon-colored sunrise glittered on the mountains far to the west. In the sky, we saw another diamond ring. Then the wall of darkness rushed out over the plain to the east. Cocks crowed. I found I had been holding my breath like a man trapped under the ice, and I let it out in a great, braying, rebel yell. I hugged Meadowlark. She hugged me. And the students hugged each other, and me, and Meadowlark, and her friends. And we were all laughing and shouting, it seemed, for the moment, as if we'd live forever. I love that story. I haven't thought about it in like, I don't know, like 20 years. I like that one. I could do one more, but I'm going to take a break for a moment. Nice to hear your story. Thank you. I'm really just curating. It's not my story. I didn't write it, but I wish I wrote like that. He's a good writer. Yeah, let's see. What could I do? I could tap a couple things. I'm feeling a little fidgety. And I'm like running out of objects to tap in my room that are novel. I'm gonna have to start inventing stuff. You missed my 20 minutes bubble wrap session. You can always check it out. I think it's public. I feel like I got a gimpy bubble wrap because I feel like a lot of the bubbles were already popped, like for whatever reason. I'm super down for more bubble wrap. That's like one of my favorite things. I want to find more stuff to crinkle. I feel like that picks up well on the cell phone microphone. Those crinkle cat toys. Yeah, I don't have any of those. I don't know if you guys have ever tried this. I bought it from the TikTok shop. This is like about as effective as like prescription pain medication. Like, this has like, okay, I don't mean this to be a commercial, but like, it's got ashwagandha, and like, I don't know if you know how calming ashwagandha is, but like, I don't give a crap about anything after a glass of this. I'm so relaxed. This is Nello Super Calm. It's like, it's a combination of different, like, all natural kind of like vitamins or whatever. So it's got ashwagandha, L-theanine, magnesium, which is a muscle relaxer, and vitamin D. And I don't know why I'm like super into supplements. Like any kind of potion you can give me to solve my problems, like I'm super down. So I tried this and it's like a giant like whoosh like flushing of all the stress and anxiety out of your body. Ashwagandha is like one of my favorite things. It's like very regulating, not just for stress, but also like your adrenal systems. I'm not a doctor, like, come on, you guys know this, but this is Nello Super Calm. This is not, I was not paid to do this. This is just a product that actually works. Sometimes TikTok shop is scary because like the algorithm is so powerful. Like it knows exactly what you want, you know? Kind of hate that. It's got my number. How am I? I'm okay. I mean, like, my life is a mess and I have no idea what I'm gonna do, and I'm just here to hang out with you guys. Like, at least I'm not the only one. Let's see. Skydiving? Oh my God. Do it. I went once and it was one of the peak experiences of my life to go skydiving. If you have the opportunity and you can, I really think you should. Um, I felt great for like 3 days after. I was just felt so alive. The fox says, I don't understand the ASMR fetish. Okay, so like, there's this. Do you know what ASMR stands for? I think it's the automatic sensory meridian response. I first heard about it back in like 2011. I didn't really understand it, but you can stimulate it a number of different ways. ASMR is one way. That's like an auditory way, like videos or like visually. But like there are other ways you can do it. They're like So, what I learned from the first person who talked to me about it is there are places on your own body that you can stimulate, like manually or physically. Like one of the ways you can do it, like some people will like tap on their collarbones to stimulate ASMR, or some people will like tap on their sternums. But like some, when you do it effectively, it triggers this like somat. I don't know if that's the right word, but it triggers this like releasing where you get this like kind of like tingle feeling up your spine. Um, I'm sure there's other ways to trigger it. Um, I'm definitely like there are lots of places like you'll have to figure out what does it for you. But so videos are like one way that people get it. One of my roommates from years ago used to like do tons of nail tapping videos. When you combine ASMR with visuals, and ASMR can be pretty powerful. The way I made my channel, I basically like watched a bunch of like my clients when I worked as an ABA worker, and I noticed that stuff they would stim on, and a lot of it was glitter and visual stims, and like spinning or like stuff like that, or tapping or dropping things. So like a pendulum would probably work. Um, but that's why I stuck a bunch of glitter in my videos, was to try to capture the autistic audience. So if you're here, thanks. Do I have a pendulum? Not really. You said you like binaural beats. It helps you astral project. I guess. Like, I I don't really enjoy listening to like binaural beats, but if music is panned well, like I find that has the same effect. Like, like I don't find most binaural beats to be compelling enough to listen to, but there's this one song I love called State of the Art by Gautier, and that like the panning is so good, it like it has the same kind of effect. Maybe I'm just a snob, but it is what it is. Do I like the sound? You know what sounds I like? You know when you have a bowl of Rice Krispie treats and then you pour milk on it and you get the little pop, like the just fizzly popping? God, I love that. If I had good microphones, I would just mic up a bowl of Rice Krispie treats. That's what I would do. Yeah, good panning in music is like one of my favorite things. But it's not done that often. I think it's kind of hard. Macaroni sounds I also like. I know that's a little gross, but I really do. I think Fruity Pebbles does the pop sound also. I never eat sugar cereal, but like I love the sounds, like the little sizzly kind of sounds. Macaroni sounds are like wet sounds though, you know? It's different. Pop Rocks, that's a good one. Anything with food ASMR, I'm a little weird. I kind of like food ASMR. Like I love watching like do you ever watch videos of women eating lobster? That's like one of my favorite things to watch. Or like oh, I love food ASMR. Okay. Okay, guys, it's been an hour. What should we do? I could read one more story, or we could go. We could hang out. I'm kind of over it. Yeah, cereal is like, I feel like cereal is top-notch crunching sounds. Night bed calls, I think, for me as well. Thank you for joining me, you guys. I appreciate having you guys here. The pendulum. Okay, I'll get a necklace. Oh my god, I don't know where it is. Okay, I'll find a necklace and I'll bring it back tomorrow. How about that? Because I would have to dig and I don't know. I don't know, man. Okay, I'll be back tomorrow at the pendulum. Thank you guys. Have a good night. Bye. You can wait. All right, you're tempting me. Maybe. Mayhaps. Do I? Do I go get a necklace? Do I do it? Will they, won't they? Okay, I'll go get it. Give me a moment.
Hey, what's up? Oh, 5/28/1962. Okay, no worries. Okay, you too.
Okay, I have returned. It wasn't that hard. Everyone's gone, and you guys get your friends to come back. Here is. Okay, check this out. This is a necklace I never wear, but it's really cool. This is like a rainbow shell that I got from Hawaii. It's got like yellow and pink. Uh, are we really just, is this all you guys want? Is this what we're doing? Like, is that, I need to do some research. You could also like ask it questions. I'll draw up a paper with yes and no. This is similar to EMDR. Does anybody have EMDR therapy? Okay. I want you to clear your mind of all worries. As you're watching the seashell back and forth, all of your worries are flowing out the top of your head like smoke, never to return again. You're drawing into your mind thoughts of your success, happiness, and fullest joy. As you watch the shell go back and forth, you're clearing out any stresses. They are not for you. You don't need to hold on to them. You can let them go, like 100 colorful balloons. flying up into the atmosphere. The latex pieces probably polluting someone's swimming pool 100 miles away, but that's for them to deal with, not you, because all of your worries are floating away, gone, leaving you with the strength to be fully present in the present moment, to pay attention to glimmers of pleasure and fun, which draws your life forward in ways that are more meaningful, exciting, and beautiful than when you were bogged down by worries. As you sleep tonight, your brain will fully process and release anything that is bothering you, leaving you to handle tomorrow with more strength and resilience than you had today. Do you feel it? The releasing of everything that is weighing you down, the gathering of strength to create more beauty and excitement in your life tomorrow. Do you feel it? Do you feel the glow of strength and happiness building in your heart to draw in more love, creativity, and warmth tomorrow? Coates McGoats says, "That's deep. Dude, that's all I think about." If you have an anxious, stressed, angry, or sad emotion, what is it telling you? I know everyone says this, but observe it like a cloud going by. You don't have to believe everything that you think. Let it be a clue as to your mental state and release it once you understand what it has told you. Your thoughts are clues. Your negative emotions are clues as to what would make you happier. But you don't have to hold on to them. You don't have to believe what they are telling you. Let them be information that you use to your own benefit. Do not let them become forces that bog you down or control you. Now that you've released all of those negative thoughts, or you've allowed them to pass you by without holding on to them or attaching to them, I want you to think of the thing that happened today that made you happiest. What was that thing that made you happiest? Hold on to that feeling. What happened? Did someone say something funny? Did you make someone laugh? Did you do something that you set out to do? Did you consciously do something that made you happy? Tomorrow, I want you to think of one small thing that you're going to do to make yourself happy. What is that thing you're gonna do? However small. Red Hunter says, I don't feel the feeling of happy. That is a muscle that you can build. Think back to when you were a child. If you don't feel happy, remember the last time you did. What were you doing? Sometimes we can go years without feeling happy. Doesn't mean you're broken. This society pulls us all away from what makes us most happy. Becoming happy is a full-time job. Ulysses says, I'm always happy. Share with us, Ulysses, what happened today that made you happiest? Holly says, do you support trans rights, ma'am? Of course I do. Trans rights are human rights. Sometimes what makes you happy is goal-directed behavior. Setting out to do something that you know will make you happy and then accomplishing it. You saw a rainbow and a sun shower at the same time at sunset. That is beautiful. That's incredible. Nothing that happens to me makes me happy. I just am happy. Well, that's an accomplishment. Lots of us aren't there yet. I definitely have to put efforts into being happy. I haven't been just happy since I was maybe 8 years old. It's always required a bunch of energy input to become happy. But that's okay. Today, what made me happy? Um, be when I get out of the house and do something. So today I went to a women's entrepreneurship meeting and I networked with a bunch of women, but what really made me happy was I got a an adaptogen iced cacao that had ashwagandha in it and a bunch of other good stuff. More so than the meeting, I think I just liked getting out of the house and going to normal heights, and the space that I was in was beautiful. Um, Being in a beautiful space, like I often feel happy, but that's like easy, you know? I was out in the sunshine. I took a bunch of buses and um, I got a giant ube ensamada, and I ate that for breakfast. That made me, I mean, food always makes me feel good. Um, and then I got on stream. I read those stories, and I think they're funny. They're terrifying, but they're also funny. Um, and I practiced for my show coming up, and that's going pretty well. So those things made me really happy. Today wasn't my most exciting day. Saturday, um, the last 2 weeks, I've been doing something that I used to think was really scary and challenging, and I've been doing it a whole bunch of days, and I'm really proud of myself. So that's really cool. and it's leading me to meet a lot of people and learn a bunch of new stuff. So that's what I'm really proud of the last couple of weeks. That's why I haven't been streaming as much. I've been out working on this new project, but it's been really good. So I'm curious where it's gonna lead me next. So we shall see. I should pull this back more. I feel like this is better. This is better. I feel like for the camera. Do I have a Twitter? No, I got banned from Twitter for making jokes about starting a death cult. Sarcasm doesn't translate well on Twitter. I come off like literally insane on Twitter. I feel like I come off better in real life. You guys, if you really loved me, would you drink my Kool-Aid? I hope you would. I promise I wouldn't poison it. What's soul gazing? Probably. That sounds like something I would do. Yeah, sarcasm is kind of lost in a text only environment. You join my cult. You say that now. I guess I need to acquire some like cheap land somewhere, godforsaken, and then a bunch of you can help me build my dream house while I keep you in a compound and feed you tomatoes with beans. What's the Gemini horoscope today? God, I hope YouTube doesn't end up banning me. I hope YouTube can tell this is a joke. I definitely keep all my FBI agents busy. Yeah, I don't recommend drinking the Kool-Aid. I'll make it more interesting. I'll spike the kombucha, the homemade kombucha, or like I'll make some oh, what's that other drink that's like a root that makes you relax? Kava. I'll spike the kava with something interesting. Taro is also delicious, but I don't think it makes you relax. Okay, guys, are you tired of my bullshit yet? Because my arm is tired. I actually had a legitimate like meditation structure for a minute until it devolved into total bullshit. Absinthe? I do like absinthe. That's a fun drink. Dude, I'm funny under certain circumstances when I feel safe. But like in most circumstances, I feel like most people don't really see my funny side very much. It only comes out like when I'm in my natural habitat. If I'm out of my element, it just like doesn't happen. Red Hunter says, I'm not tired of you. Can't move anyway. I'm working. What are you working on? Oh my god, there's vines on my walls? Like, this place is a pigsty. I can't believe there's plants growing on the walls. Someone should tell the owner of the house. It's a fucking mess in here. Landlord is poison ivy. I wish. That would be so cool. Super bad? I haven't seen that movie in years. That's like a really bro-y movie, right? It was like, it's a bromance kind of movie, right? I probably saw it like 10 years ago. Oh man. Along those lines, do you guys remember This Is the End? I feel like that's a bro movie that I really enjoyed. Remember that movie? It's like the end of the world. It's like the apocalypse, and like a hole opens up outside of the guy's mansion, and they're like stuck inside the mansion for like weeks. It's like it's like the end times, and a hole opens up in the earth. It's like hell on earth. There's like demons walking the earth, and like everything is fiery. Remember, This Is the End? It had like a huge celebrity cast. Like, there was a lot of people in that one. It was so dumb, but also pretty good. I feel like when I go into a movie just assuming it's gonna be bad, and that was one of those movies. Like, I'm really picky about movies. But with This Is the End, I went into it with friends thinking like, "Oh, I'm gonna hate this. This is gonna suck." And then I liking it because my standards were really low. But normally when I go into a movie, I'm gonna hate it unless it's like the most incredible surreal art film you've ever seen in your life with like constantly changing cinematography or something. I don't know. I'm a brat. I'm a brat when it comes to film. Did you hear that Gen Z is trying to cancel Eminem? Like, I'm surprised he hasn't been canceled already? Okay, guys, I'm winding down. I hope you guys have a wonderful night. Very relaxing. Sleep well. And I will see you next time. Have a good night.